Marcella Raimondo, an eating disorder psychologist. Fascinating discussion. It's a huge issue, and not only in the country here in the United States, but in the world. People have different levels. We talk about that. I first ask if eating disorder is a spectrum. To which degrees, and there's people that purge. There's people that binge eat. I didn't quite understand what binge eating meant, and she gave a great description on that, and just what should we do when we have a friend who's got an eating disorder. Approaching them and talking about weight is not an easy subject. It's very, very difficult. So, what should we do? She gives great insight on that. She herself had issues with eating disorders, and now she's turned it around. My goodness, her credentials are quite impressive. She's a doctor. She's on the board of Association of Size, Health, and Diversity. She also draws a direct connection between eating disorders and racism and the marginalized. Very interesting conversation there and what happens there. But just a great conversation with Dr. Marcella Raimondo, and I know you're going to enjoy it. And it's a serious topic, and it needs to be discussed. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pins. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business and it lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pins Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Marcella Raimondo, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so happy to talk to you. Are eating disorders a spectrum?
I would say yes.
You're hesitant.
Yes. Yet, it's also, they are a spectrum in terms of behaviors. They are a spectrum in that I look at the medical components and what might pull someone all the way to, the end of a spectrum of severity. Their heart rate is low, their vitals are not great. They're doing blood work and they have abnormal results. They are engaging in behaviors, just daily or multiple times a day. I would look at that like that is really severe. Yet, I also work with folks who are dieting chronic for decades. They have this really tumultuous relationship with food. They have a tumultuous relationship with their bodies, and they're coming, and they're coming to me, and they're more than not happy. They're in a lot of distress. Now, I would say that's significant. That and I'm not going to say one pain is greater than the other, and one level of distress is greater than the other. What I'm saying is that on a medical perspective, yeah, I would say some folks are more severe. Yet when I work with folks who have just been dieting and tell me I hate my body and I hate my relationship with food, yeah, that for me sounds pretty severe too.
Now, when somebody says that, I have heard that. I hate my relationship with food. I hate my body. There's just got to be something that's deeper happening there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
there is.
that's a spectrum as well, perhaps.
Yes, I could see. Yeah, I yet and you can, like, people bring up their relationship with caregivers, bring up, but yet what I start to hear more, and at times people do bring up various traumas in their lives, and so you are hearing that that deeper those deeper stories, and those deeper hurts. Uh, but what I'm also hearing is the societal diet culture. I'm hearing that. Well, I've gotten messages about I need to lose weight. I get teased where I go, how people respond to me and my body. I get more attention when I lose weight. So it's what also feels like starts to contribute more is the diet culture, and the diet culture that can keep that level of distress around constantly, constantly, constantly. And so this is where I get, upset as a clinician, because folks share like, but I get more attention when I lose weight.
Mm,
And I can't deny that. I go, yeah. And so we do then a lot of like values work. Like, okay, so what's important to you? And they're like, well, what's important to me is connecting to people who just love me for who I am. I'm like,
mm,
okay, that's what we gotta, even though I'm saying in a way of like, yeah, and I hear you about like having to withstand that kind of diet culture, having to know and that when I lose weight, I get more attention. And I'm never ever going to say that that's okay, but I am noting that, and that's like one of my hard parts as a therapist, particularly as a therapist working with eating disorders, and just people dieting and diet culture, is that
mm.
I can't deny their experience. I can say, oh,
Right.
that's your imagination, people think you're gorgeous. It's like, no, I hear you, like I get, and it's not just attention, it's like all kinds
Mm.
of privileges. And folks do even share, particularly folks who are marginalized, share that like there is harm that comes my way if I can't keep my body thin. And I also can't deny that experience.
It's it's absolutely horrible. I mean, there are things that we can do that make us feel good that are not good for us. We have to come to that realization.
Right.
And you, Marcella, interesting how your mother's from Peru, and you talk about as a child that when you got to a certain weight, there was a little less. There was almost a withdrawal from her with her love and affection. You felt as a child.
Hmm. I felt concern. Yes, I felt concern from her as I began to go through puberty. Of your body's changing, your body's getting bigger, and it was, I think what was hard was, I didn't know as a 13, 14-year-old how to make sense of that. Like I
Mm,
didn't speak the language of nuance. I couldn't tell you like, yes, my mother was dealing with her own racism and depression. So she was actually trying to protect me by her concern. No, not when I'm 13. So it was pretty stark, like to hear those messages, and they were also just very confusing messages, because I was also told like, and you have to eat all this food because that
mm.
would be an insult to our culture if you didn't eat it.
Yeah, and I believe your father is Italian as
Yeah.
well. My father is as well, and, yeah, you did not have an empty plate, that's for sure,
Yeah.
because that would be when I go to Italy, my relatives argue over who gets to feed me and my guests. So can you imagine if I don't finish the plate, they feel that's insulted. Well, you didn't like it. And it's just that sometimes just the portions are just so large.
Right.
Did you ever reconcile with your mother those feelings and what happened there?
To an extent. To an extent, we've had conversations. To an extent, um, there was a lot of unspoken acknowledgement, as well as spoken acknowledgement as well, and that took years. That was not a simple or a one that was not a one time conversation. Yeah, that took decades.
Fortunately, we see occasionally in that generation that things were so tough. There was world wars going on, and
Mhm.
feelings were the last things involved. It was how are we going to eat, and how are we going to heat, and how we, and sometimes sharing things like that can be difficult for them. You make the direct link, which is perhaps your main kind of thesis to racism and marginalized people and eating disorders.
Mhm.
Please speak upon that.
Um, I think, uh, well, I'll start off saying I think in many ways in this field of eating disorders, we're getting it all wrong. I think there is way too much focus on weight as this really uh, pretty shallow component of an eating disorder, and so what I have felt clinically in the field is that people are not unhappy with their weight. They're trying to control. There's trauma. We just need to refeed people. They eat. They restore the weight. They're happy,
Hmm.
and that's a very linear approach. Uh, what what and sadly, not a lot of people really benefit from that kind of approach anyway. Like the
Mm.
prognosis of recovery is pretty low. And so it also then perpetuates this stereotype or this thinking that, well, people don't really recover from an eating disorder anyway. And then what I have dealt with in healthcare are political conversations of like, well, since people don't recover, we're really not going to put money into it. Also,
Hmm.
like, it's kind of money down the drain. So you can, so where do I even begin with that? And I'm laughing not because it's funny, but because I'm
Right.
very angry. I'm very
Yes.
angry.
Yes. Gallows
Um,
humor. Yes.
yeah. So I uh I'm trying to find the words because I what has been illuminated and really smacked in our faces with our marginalized communities and their eating disorders is how much we're getting it wrong, how nuanced it really is. Like the body, yes, weight is a part of it, but weight is very symbolic of like what is your body story? What is
Hmm.
happening to you as to why you would which as to why you would engage in your eating disorder. What is your eating disorder protecting you from? What is its function? This isn't about people who are control freaks, but about people who are dealing with a lot in their lives and trying to manage just one aspect. I mean, when I work with folks with eating disorders, I feel like actually we need to work on boundaries. We need to work on having you take care of yourself and not start to get too involved with other circumstances and other people. So I often do a lot of boundary setting.
Hmm.
Not trying to tell people you need to loosen up. It's like no, it's the other way around. With marginalized folks and eating disorders, there's just a lot of holding space and a lot of nuance exploration, and a lot of talk about racism, a lot of talk about oppressions, a lot of talk about homophobia, transphobia, ageism, ableism. I mean, there's just so much because of how it sits in their bodies. I mean, I have had folks that talk about their skin color and where they were in their family and who had the lightest skin and how
Hmm.
that was a contributor to an eating disorder because they were the darker skinned folks. I had folks share with me how having slim cheeks was really valued, and they grew up having rounder cheeks, and that was the start of their eating disorder.
Wow.
So it's also hearing these 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 kind of these bodily features that we wouldn't think to put on a eating disorder questionnaire, like, oh, tell me about your skin color, tell me about your cheeks, tell me about your eyes, your nose, your the size of your butt, your hair, the texture of your hair, how does your body align with your gender identity, does it, like those questions we don't see on screening. It's more like, are you happy with your weight and shape? I'm like, that says that doesn't say a whole lot. And then
Mm.
when we have that, then we just continue to focus treatment on weight and shape. And weight and shape are things to talk about, absolutely. Yet, I think we need to talk about weight and shape in a more symbolic thing. Like, what does it represent? What is more? Like, there's so much more behind your weight and shape. I want to hear the complete story, or as the story unravels to us more and more and more. Like, a lot of this work is a lot of uncovering. Like, folks can share some things, and then a month later, like, and now this has come up.
Hmm. Has it been your experience that minorities with weight issues, how do you say it? I'm not quite sure, but, are treated less than white with weight issues? Have you seen that?
Yes.
Wow.
What comes up is like for minorities or marginalized folks, uh, if they're in a larger body and they're engaging in eating disorder behaviors, and I don't mean just binge eating, they're engaging in all kinds of eating disorder behaviors. Their eating disorder isn't taken as seriously. Um,
Interesting.
like in healthcare, in my setting, like I will get patients sent over and they'll say, like, in the chart it'll say binge eating. I was like, okay, and then I do an assessment of behaviors. I'm like, whoa, wait, you're doing way more than binge eating. And I tell them, like, I'm giving you a diagnosis of bulimia, and they're like, wait, no one has ever said that to me. And I've had so many folks saying, like, but I thought only skinny white girls get this. I'm like, no, no, you have an eating disorder. And there's a lot of like mind blowing of like, and I asked them, like, well, you tell me you purge daily. What did you think of that? And they're like, I just do it, but I still don't have an eating disorder. And so there's time about there's also discussion about like, okay, let's kind of just sit with that because you have your notion of who gets an eating disorder. It's not you, and maybe your and I want to hear about your eating behaviors or these eating disorder behaviors and what it means to you. And that takes a great deal of unpacking um, and sitting with folks and their readiness to look at what an eating disorder means to them, and also my frustration and my concern, not with them but with a system that really perpetuates this really like thin white girl who gets an eating disorder and not anyone else. So yeah, no, they're the
Wow.
difference is the way they're not. the way folks are not taken seriously because they're in bigger bodies. They are uh, they are a minority race. Yeah, they are transgender. I mean, they're older. They have a disability. It's just that stereotype that we think of is so damaging.
And can you define binge eating, Marcella?
Yes, binge eating is eating what one considers to be, a large amount of food. So, like, in a very short period of time, and feeling like one can't stop, and eating past the point of fullness, it may even be past the point of discomfort, and having just tremendous shame and doing this in isolation.
In isolation by themselves.
Pretty yeah.
Wow. I mean, I've certainly been guilty in the past of having way too much pizza or made too many chips or anything. Do I feel shame afterwards? Well, I think, oh boy, I really shouldn't have done that. But yeah, that's that. I could see how if they're alone and they feel shame. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. I could see
And
how that could happen.
the thing is that emotional eating, and as you said, like, sometimes I eat too much pizza, or I
Right.
had a bad day,
Yeah.
and I ate, I ate ice cream, I ate pizza, and we feel uncomfortable, and we feel guilty, and we're like, "Oh, that was," we have that kinda like, "Oh, that was a lot of food," kinda thing, and because of diet culture, I mean, we also go for the comfort foods too. Like, I don't know folks who've had a bad day and eat carrots. I
Mm.
have folks who have a bad day and they're like, I need something that's going to soothe me emotionally. And usually those foods are what society deems as unhealthy. So we eat those foods. We feel guilty. We start to feel like kind of in our bodies, a kind of sluggish, full feeling. Um, Oh, so we're familiar with that. So it's like taking that like times 10 of someone who does this regularly. And it's not like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It is really like this self-loathing,
Wow.
shame that that comes with it. And folks who share with me that do binge eating are having more than just a bad day. There are ways that they have like unresolved trauma, like tremendous unresolved trauma,
Wow.
that impacts their day-to-day living, from their relationships to their work, um, um, to just and it also could come out somatically too, in terms of headaches, in terms of aches and pains. And so often what they're sharing is like, my life is rough,
Mm.
like really hard, and I'm carrying all this I'm carrying all this trauma, and I'm not having this meaningful life. In fact, I'm having the opposite. I'm having a very hard life. So binge eating is my escape. It's where I numb. It's where I check out. It's where I have comfort for a brief period of time before the shame kicks in. And so the folks that I have worked with, I mean, they all come in saying, I want to binge less, and or I don't want to binge anymore. And I said, okay, we can certainly look at what we can do. However, I tell them, your binge eating is not going to improve until we really start to look at your life circumstances. Like, we need to see, like, how do you feel about doing some intensive trauma work, or how are we going to resolve this trauma that you're holding, or maybe if we feel like we can't resolve it, or it's not going to be resolved, how do we then like hold that, and hold that acceptance, or doing what we can right now. Because I certainly don't want to say, like, your binge eating's not going to improve until your life improves. So, like, people are like, that might take a decade. And so it means like your binge eating is not going to improve until we acknowledge your life and kind of bring it into therapy as well. And we can do things hand in hand, and have the that will start to improve.
Yeah, I like your point earlier. You never hear somebody said, "Wow, I just ate too much spinach." It's usually something that's not that good for you. Can are is binge eating and eating disorders another addiction like alcohol, drugs, gambling?
Uh, there's a lot of argument or controversy, like are eating disorders and addiction. And I would say like there are similarities. There are definite similarities. Where it starts to get tricky is when, well, like the outcomes. Like a lot of folks work to not have those addictions, like alcohol, drugs, gambling, in their lives.
Mm.
With an eating disorder, it's like, well, we have to bring in, of course, you have to eat. And so it's more of like we're not looking to have a life without it. We're looking to revolutionize, like, because you obviously need to eat. And eating is a part of living. Eating is a part of connection, togetherness. People get closer because of food. Um, and with folks with eating disorders, like food is actually, they drive a wedge in their relationship. So it's, I feel in many ways it's different because like we are going to have to like reverse that. um so I feel it is different. What has also come up is folks have, there's been discussion around folks who are addicted to sugar. Say I
Mm.
and And this is where I want to be careful because I know I might upset some folks, or like, but I am addicted. I actually have this, and so I want to point out, like, there are folks that have a response to sugar, absolutely, and need to monitor how much sugar they take in. And we live in a society that we have sugar in a lot of our food.
Oh, everything. It's horrible.
And that's a result because a decade or 15 years ago, we didn't want to have fat in our foods. Fat was
Right.
the demon. So we took all the fat out of foods and put corn syrup instead. So now we have foods that are loaded with corn syrup. And I'm not saying sugar is bad. I'm not, but I'm
Right.
saying like, oh yeah, it's in everything. Like
Oh my goodness.
everything. And so I what I'm wanting to say more is that like we're kind of getting a lot of sugar in our foods. Okay, we have to do some monitoring, particularly if we're noticing like our bodies are having a response. But I want to really make sure we don't put sugar in the same camp as alcohol and saying like, well, I can never eat
Mm.
sugar again. I'm like, that's actually not true. There are many folks that you actually can come back to a relationship with sugar. Sugar doesn't hit you the same way as alcohol. Is sugar more in our foods and our daily eating? Yes, than alcohol. Because alcohol, there's a distinct section in the supermarket. There are liquor
Mm.
stores and all, and so alcohol doesn't just. Sometimes it does. I didn't, but alcohol doesn't just like show up in all your foods the way sugar does. So it's just more of I wanting to be careful when we're saying like, well, I don't want to get into sugar addiction and is it true or not true? I'm saying if I had to answer that question with one word, I'd say no.
Mm.
And there are folks, because I'm always going to come in with another, like, and there are folks that do have to look at how their body responds to sugar, whether from diabetes or another medical or mental health uh, you know condition. So I want to note that, um, but I don't want to demonize sugar, and
Mm.
so I'm not demonizing sugar at all.
I make it a habit of looking at labels and, when I buy a spice mix, just dry spice mix, of some garlic and it's got sugar in it. We just don't need sugar. But then I'm sure the manufacturers will argue, well, that's what the people are buying. They're only providing what people are buying. Uh, so you just have to be conscious for it and look out. Are eating disorders hereditary?
They can have a hereditary component to them, yes.
There was a 60 Minutes a couple months ago about that, and it's been very controversial. I don't know if you saw it, but,
Oh.
um, yeah, about how some obese people, they were being told that it wasn't them, that it was something that was genetic, and, uh, they shouldn't I don't wanna I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, but, so they're doing studies and seeing that eating disorders can be hereditary. That's very interesting
Mhm.
because I always thought it came from trauma, but I guess trauma can be derived from something hereditary as well.
Right. And and as we know, like, eating disorders don't just come from just one source too. And so, like, yes, there's a genetic component. There can be, you know, and there's a trauma component, and there's a huge societal component. Yeah, there's a relational component. Yeah.
My goodness. And you've had struggles yourself with it. If we have a friend that we believe has struggles with it, what should we do?
Mm, I would, I, c- well, let's see. Um, Sit down, talk with your friend, let them know that you're noticing some of their behaviors around food, um, and noticing that it's been happening for some time. Express care, um, offer to talk. Um, I think those are some main things. Folks often notice when there's lost weight. Folks often notice when there's some obvious behaviors, like lost weight, not eating much, um, things like going to the bathroom pretty regularly. So it's just like, oh, those
Ugh,
are those behave. Folks notice that, but folks may not notice when someone is not in a thin body, but have been dealing a lot with some life circumstances, or there's some isolation happening, and folks may check in and say, "How are you?" or "Are you able to take care of yourself?" Um, and I think it might be kind of tricky if, depending on your relationship, to kind of
right.
do an assessment of behaviors. Like,
Mm.
are you hurting yourself in any way? Um, and folks, and you might say, so that's a really hard. I'm not sure if it's like for the friends and the family to really do an assessment of behaviors versus more of like, seems like things are really hard right now and you might
Mm.
want to talk to a professional. Um, and then I would hope that it would be on the professional then to do the whole assessment of behaviors, including eating disorder behaviors.
How did you know when you first had an issue? Did a friend tell you? How did you know?
I knew for myself, because my relationship with food was just really starting to unravel.
Mm.
And I was noticing like my fears around eating, noticing my severe and very rigid calorie tracking. I mean, just noticing like what started off as like, I'm going to do some healthy eating, like just took off.
Wow. And so you realized it yourself, um, and made that change. It's a difficult thing to do. I had my issues with weight as well. I just worked too hard and, got up to 340 pounds. And the doctor told me, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. And so that's all I needed to hear. But my relationship with food was very different. I just ate too much and I knew it. And I've always been an athlete my whole life. And I knew I could lose the weight. I just had to, use some discipline to get there. Um, I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
Uh, well, with discipline, I sometimes it can feel kind of punitive.
Mm,
Like, um, I hear like people have to do what they need to for health. I I hope that when people choose health, they're choosing like I want a quality of life that's meaningful for me, where I could be engaged, where I can have food liberations, where I could be connected to my body. Because I say that because sometimes people will lose weight, sometimes people won't, and I really hope that's not the goal. But the goal is I really need to look at what I'm doing with food, and my
mm,
body will respond. And I need to look at like how I'm connecting with myself, and am I present? How am I connecting with others? And how do I get back to being present in my life, and using food with that? Um, so I would like to think like using food with that means like I'm going to cook. I'm going to eat with others. I'm going to go to local community events. Like, I'm hoping that is what we focus on. I really feel there's way too much focus on weight loss, and I'm like, well, weight loss is an outcome because it may or may not happen for folks, and I really hope that's not the goal, but the goal is that relationship, and to have a body that like, well, I want my numbers to be good. I want my cholesterol, I want my heart rate, I
mm.
want my vitals, I want my lipids, I want my
Blood
diabetes,
pressure.
my blood sugars, like those, yes, those. If folks are like, I need a number, I'm like, great, focus on those numbers.
And if somebody is struggling with this, Marcella, and they're quietly kind of doing this, and you know, uh, to the extent, I don't know if they're purging or whatever it may be, but they're just kind of maintaining themselves, and they are struggling. What should they do?
I would I would talk to a professional. I would try, and there are more online help available due to the pandemic. So there is more availability of,
Mm,
because I don't know, folks sometimes use the words like, well, I can live with a little eating disorder. And I was like, no, you can't.
hmm,
I mean, you could. At the end of the day, this is your decision. However, your your mortality, is, you are at a greater risk of dying with by having just a little bit of an eating disorder, and also asking like, and again, your decision, like, is this the quality of life you want to have by having a little eating disorder, like it, because that means like you're just thinking about food a lot and not in a good way.
mm.
So it's asking like, what is the quality of life you want to have? And there is help, and there's a lot of online help as well, so that you can, not engage in any type of eating disorder behavior. and you can have a relationship with food that is liberating for you. And so I would I want the goal to be food and body liberation for everybody. And and yeah, we live in a society that makes it hard.
Hmm.
And so the discipline, so to speak, can be like, what are you going to do on a daily basis to sustain you? What are you going to do on a daily basis to examine your relationship with food and bring in a lot of compassion with that? What are you going to do when at times we slip, so to speak? Are you going to be like must get on it, or going to be like, I'm a human being, that was hard, didn't feel good. Can I look at that situation and see what came up for me with that slip? Like sometimes I'm just a human being. Is it really a
Hmm.
slip? Or was like, wow, I was really emotional that day. And so I engaged in an eating behavior, and to say, and sometimes, to say like, okay, how what do I need to look at for myself? And not to say like, wow, that was really bad, that was really bad. It's just more like, well, I needed to cope, and sometimes we do cope with food. And I'm like, and if I'm coping with food and that is my coping, then I would say like, okay, yeah, what can what can we do to not just have food as your coping?
Because certainly we have an obesity problem in the country, correct? Where people are overweight and we want to do something, but your point is you shouldn't actually focus on the weight. You should focus on being healthy. Being healthy means that you're not obese and these levels are monitored. It's a terrible kind of cycle, isn't it?
Well, I this obesity problem is a very controversial topic, because
Interesting.
where I'm coming from, I feel like we are just constantly being sensationalized about weight in our society. I mean, let's say, okay, I mean, I believe in health at every size. And so I don't believe in let's look at, let's look at people and help them lose weight. However, for the sake of this conversation, I'm like, yeah, okay, let's take a look at the obesity problem. Um, the thing is that all our efforts are not working. So why are we
Mm,
focusing on this?
mm,
All these efforts to lose weight are not really are not working. We're a lot of really extreme relationships, or these diet regimens are incredibly extreme. In fact, as an eating disorder psychologist, I'm looking at some of these diet regimens. I'm like, this is what I would diagnose as an eating disorder. Um, I mean, one of my mentors, Dr. Deb Burgard, says, and I just carry that quote with her, that she says with me, of like, are we prescribing for fat people what we diagnose as eating disorder in thin people? I mean, that
wow.
I'm just holding that quote forever. Um, so I just want to note, like, okay, we are spending trillions of dollars. We are really trying to get folks to lose weight. And folks have shared with me some of their diets. I'm like, that's a really extreme diet. Um, Often, and or there's various medications and surgeries that don't have
Mm,
long lasting effects. So, um, like gym membership, that's ridiculous. And folks in larger bodies have shared, like, well, I go to the gym, but I'm like ridiculed at the gym, or I'm trying to work out and someone comes up to me and is like, "Good for you." I'm like, and their response, so they're like, "So it's so I'm just like, I don't think we have it right with our obesity concerns. I think we're perpetuating harm and causing even more
Wow.
harm, because we're so like we must get folks to lose weight, and like these recent guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics came out, and they are prescribing some really restricting eating for kids, and like that is only going to be that is only
Detrimental.
going to be so damaging because as a kid, you're developing that relationship with food. You are thinking very black and white. This is when a lot of your core beliefs and how you are shaped. I mean, think about us when we were kids. Like we ate ice cream on a hot
Yeah.
day, but we also liked fruit and veggies too, or
Yes.
maybe we didn't. But then we started to grow into developing our taste and change. So um, it is a time where you let kids just be kids. And if you're noticing, like, wow, my kid's emotional and they're not talking to me about it, but they're eating, okay, that's a time to say, like, let's start to use our words. Let's start
Mm.
to use our words. So it might be intervening because I've worked with folks who have shared that with me, and I said, let's gently intervene. Let's gently intervene, saying, what's up for you? I notice things you're eating a lot and you're sad. So let's start to use our words. But those guidelines are just really coming in with a medication, surgery, restriction, and I'm just like, they're terrifying. They're
Wow.
terrifying.
So what should we do? What should we do to help our community, our friends, our neighbors, etc., in these disorders? What can be done?
I think we need to first look at our own biases and note, like, what is coming up for myself. Myself included. Um, I think we need to really work on building community. And when we build community, that's when we notice who has what and who doesn't, and how do we address that. We need to look at food justice, like what who has access to foods, who doesn't. I mean, it's it's mind-boggling how much we prescribe, like, you should be eating all these fruits and vegetables a day and drinking water, but that isn't available to many communities. So how do we so bringing in food justice. We do enjoy movement, but when we have parks that are closed or gym memberships that are ridiculously expensive and not very welcoming, I so then we're really not celebrating movement. Like,
Mm.
is it where are our community centers that we have dance classes and events? Um where that was one of my most favorite things when I went to Italy, pre-pandemic, was that in every town or few blocks there would always be this center, like, I don't know if it was like a church or something, and then like,
Piazza.
yeah, and there was always gelato shops.
Yeah.
And every night, every piazza had people just sitting there eating and talking to each other with an ice cream. That's it. They were talking, they weren't on their phones, they were looking at each other, they had their facial expressions, and they were enjoying ice cream. They were out. Where's that?
Certainly a return to that is in order.
Yeah.
I love that you also are an advocate of martial arts.
Yeah.
I mean, self-discipline in martial arts and leads to so much positivity and healthiness.
I would say that kind of sure that that kind of discipline or that commitment came from me, and it was a community commitment as well, because there were times like, I don't want to do this. This is hard. But that community commitment of like of my teacher saying, when you don't come to class, we notice that and you're missed. And we need each other to help each other grow, because when you're not coming to class, your training partners, who are they going to train with?
Mm.
So, and we miss
Yeah,
you.
that's very, very nice. That community right there that I think everybody needs. Marcella Raimondo, what motivates you?
Uh, Motivates me to,
It's purposely ambiguous.
oh, I love that. I Holding a vision motivates me.
Hmm,
Um, my values motivate me. Um, um, that reminder, like when I see progress on the way, that motivates me. Yeah, shifts motivate me.
that's wonderful. And how do you measure success?
I measure success when I have a new perspective or new thinking, and my behaviors are in accordance with that. Um, um, Trying to think if there are some examples. I think there are ways I have like okay, this is a story. Um, and it has to do with me stepping into myself and me being and me believing in myself. Like in one of my jobs, I was working really hard, but I never really stepped into my not my job but myself in my job. So my presentations about my projects didn't really show that I had confidence in them. But I was working really hard. And so I did not get promoted. And I was devastated.
Mm,
Also mad. Like, what do you mean? I'm working really hard. And I sat with my director about it, and he was so loving, but yeah, he was like, "No, I'm not going to promote you." He's like, "I don't understand." He even said, "Like, you do this work and it's good, but you're not even behind it." He was like, I can't promote you with that." And I was crushed because I didn't know what to do. Like, so you want me to be confident? I'm like, okay, there's no playbook on that. And he was like, well, I want you to every single day write things, write a journal of what you have accomplished every single day. And I think because that promotion, that was also, I think what motivated me was that degree of pain. It wasn't so much the promotion as it was the pain
hmm.
of 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 that. And so I did that. And which and then I no something there was a shift where I began to ask for feedback in a way that from work that I wasn't doing before, paying more attention to how I was coming across and my communications. I think I started to get more into my martial arts of how I was holding my body. Um, and then came time for another review at work. and my director wasn't able to make the meeting, and so my boss went to speak on my behalf to this. It was a leadership meeting at work, and so my boss went to speak on my behalf, and then she told me later, she goes, "Well, I really didn't have to say anything because the director wasn't there, but he wrote a letter about how he strongly recommended you for this promotion." And
Hmm.
after the letter was read, people were like, "We're done. She just gets promoted. That's just that." Like he saw,
Wow.
he was like, that letter was just, nothing more needed to be said after that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was very excited. Eating disorders. It's affected people in my family. It's affected people I
Mhm.
know, and it's just you've made me rethink. Kind of obesity as really it shouldn't focus so much on the weather on the weight. Should focus more on getting healthier, and then from that comes the great thing. And unfortunately, there's these companies out there just, they're going to make money, and there's capitalism involved, and there's certain profitability to obesity that we know, and it's horrible. And
Oh, yeah.
people are marginalized. And so we have to fight against that as well. But I just think reframing it as you've directed today just it helps me, and hopefully anyone listening, and the way that you have turned your issue around and now are helping others is absolutely remarkable. How can we get in touch with you?
You can go to my website. That's probably the easiest way, at www.marcella education, or ed training, or .com, and you'll see all my information there. I am also on Facebook as Marcella Raimondo. I'm on Instagram as Dr. Marcella Raimondo, and I post pretty regularly on Instagram. So that's how you can get hold of me, and all those. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So you can get a hold of me in those, in all those social media outlets.
Very good. And I'll make sure to those get put in the show notes. And like we said earlier, if you have a friend who's struggling, get them talk to a professional. If it can't be you, perhaps somebody in their area or online, whatever it may be. But that's what's going to help. I want to thank you so much for your time today. You've certainly enlightened me, and I wish you well, Doctor.
Thank you.
Be well. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations.